Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I am H.A. Conrad, here as always with Stuart Tiffin, my intrepid and amazing co-host. Hello, Stuart.
Good day, AJ. How are you?
Hey. Good. We took a week off for personal reasons, meaning Mother's Day. Some
Who
people
would have
had
thought?
to celebrate. Some people had to celebrate, I guess. But back at you, and we're gonna be talking about the next couple of episodes of the Mayfair Witches. Before that, we've got a very minor amount of news, not too much on that front. But do you want to dive in, Stuart?
I feel like I used to read articles on IFL Science a fair
Mhm.
amount in the mid 2000s, like earlier on, but it's still out there. They're still producing news. And this is an article about scientists who once scanned the brains of 3 suspected zombies in Haiti.
Mm. Yeah, so I guess in the 90s, and this was mainly people that their relatives thought were dead, then would see them wandering around either months or years later. And, not just that, but checked out the graves of at least one of them, and it was not a grave that was full of person, but full of rocks. And then, honestly, this is just like, my worst nightmare, because I think what they determined was there was either some mental illness going on with these people, and they had been maybe under the influence of other people keeping them captive. One specific person was like, he was zombified by his uncle and kind of kept chained to a log, which is just horrible. And I guess the way that this all worked is that they were given a neurotoxin, to sort of, and maybe it isn't clear whether the neurotoxin was given sort of consistently and continually to keep them sort of under the influence. That wasn't really made clear. But the idea of anybody using a neurotoxin and then, you sort of being chained to a log sounds like the most horrific thing I could think of.
It
So,
doesn't sound good.
no.
No.
Um,
I mean, yeah, like some of them they did like DNA testing and determined quite easily that these were not the same people who had been buried.
yeah.
Uh,
It's a case of mistaken identity.
that's a pretty major one. Although every so often I run into someone who looks a lot like my dad, and I'm like, what are you doing here? And then
Mm,
it's not him.
the
So I could see
doppelganger.
if I was in grief or something, and I was like, that's him. And the person who I was pointing out happened to be mentally ill and maybe very highly suggestible. You could see
Yeah.
how it could happen.
Well, and especially when people are grieving, they see things, I could imagine if you saw somebody similar that would be jarring, and you could really believe that, especially if you're in a culture where they have that belief, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they could see that being a pretty disturbing phenomenon. I don't know. Do you have any doppelgangers out there, Stuart? I know that I probably do, or I have a kind of a face that people think they know.
Every
But
so often, people tell me that they think I look like X or Y. When I was a gawky teenager, people thought I looked like Ralph Macchio. That that resemblance has definitely never gotten stronger and only gotten like less real as we both aged in different directions. Ralph and I.
so you're not dealing with any kind of, fandom or
No,
mistaken identity after this Cobra Kai thing, huh?
no, should be safe from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in any case, that's pretty much all the news we have today. Not too much going on in terms of projects or updates. But that's all right. Leaves us a little bit of time to talk about the next couple of episodes of Mayfair Witches. And it's the two episodes are this is episodes 5 and 6 of the series, and we've got the Thrall and Transference. Um, so
Both directed by Haifa Al Mansour
mhm.
with a couple of different writers.
Yep. And then this is, you know, the which I think we kind of figured this was going to be the case, but Cyprian and Rowan are pretty much trapped in the house. And so it's one of those kinds of episodes where people are in this sort of continuing loop. And I
Yeah,
think
we
that
knew they were going to be trapped because the doors
right,
closed in their faces. They were trying to get out of the house last episode. But
right.
when we meet them again, it's like there's a disconnect, and we are trying to like scratch our heads and figure out what exactly is going on. I mean, it's not like it takes long to figure out,
Right.
but it is like an interesting way to continue the episode with like a hard cut from the action that was happening when we last saw them into like a new sort of reality or unreality. But we
Yeah.
also have another cold open in Scotland
Yes.
here where we are maybe it's throughout this episode that we're introduced to the arrival of the witch dude or
Yeah, the witch hunter.
the witch hunter. But the first thing that's going to happen here is that poor Suzanne successfully delivers a baby boy who happens to have fingers that are a little more webby
Mm.
than usual, and is accused of poisoning the mother by this like gruff, unpleasant Scottish dude. Is he the same guy that she met in the field in that other episode?
I think so. Yes. I think he
Kind of,
was
I don't know. They all look
they all look kind of
disheveled.
dirty and pilgrimy to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. So anyway, that it maybe he's got an axe to grind on that level and um it, but you can clearly see what the trend of this thing is going to be. There's that sort of fervor about witches and magic and things like that, and she sees it coming, you can tell, but what are you
I don't
supposed to
know
do?
that she does see it coming.
She's a little nervous about it. I mean, she
Yeah.
gets the negativity thrown her way,
She definitely
definitely.
is picking up on the negative vibes because yeah, it's the next morning when they're going to check on the mother. They can't find her, but they do see that the witchfinder is in the square and he's got maybe a dead lady in a cage and he's talking about how she was fornicating with Satan. And Suzanne takes her sister and like walks away while Skeezy dad is like staring daggers at them. It's clearly a terrible situation. I don't know if it's like a reality that Suzanne could just take her show on the road at this exact time because it feels like, I don't know, things are going to go badly for her. It seems very obvious, right?
Yeah. I mean, to everybody else from the outside watching.
Yeah, I guess.
So but that's if you're off screaming in the woods, I guess somebody's going to find out eventually.
We did say that their screaming, their woods screaming was a little loud. And the witch hunter in this episode is like, so I followed some screaming in the woods.
Yeah,
And I came upon
yeah,
this lady.
yeah.
Uh,
Um,
yeah. Anyway, so bad scene in Scotland. Doesn't feel like it's we're coming up to an introduction to Lasher, which happens in episode 6 with Suzanne. But in this one in New Orleans, Rowan and Cyprian just keep waking up and doing pillow talk over and over again. Um, which doesn't feel super. I mean, it's like they're getting to know each other in the weirdest way possible. Plus, he's also seen her entire history every time they touch and have sex. So
yep.
awkward.
And awkward, and also keeps making her these weird breakfasts,
It's
and
egg
that
sardu. He loves to make egg sardu. It's his
he
favorite thing.
does. But then you kind of gradually see the world falling apart. I guess Lasher's magic is not sort of forever sustaining, and you could only sort of glamour things up for a little while.
Well,
So
like, is he trying to just keep this loop going until Cyprian dies?
yeah, I'm
Like
sure.
that seems to be what Cyprian thinks is happening. And by the third time he's going up the stairs, he can barely make it, and the wound
Right. And I
is
mean,
worse.
look, Cyprian represents this outside person that influences Rowan, and probably one of the only people that actually knows at least a little bit or believes what's going on and has some idea of the history of the Mayfairs and Lasher. So,
And we also learned that there's history between Talamasca and Lasher and the Mayfairs in this sort of scenario because he
right.
has a vision of a former. I think the guy's name is Stuart. Yeah, Stuart
It
Townsend.
is weirdly his name is Stuart Townsend, and I think that was actually his name in the book. But also by happenstance, Stuart Townsend is also an actor that portrayed Lestat in one of the vampire film adaptations, I think.
Oh.
So I thought that I was like, is this a coincidence? I don't know. So
Hmm.
who knows which Stuart came first, but I just thought that was kind of funny. Um, but I found this out by doing sort of a trying to remember because I vaguely remember that there was like in the books a Talamasca agent that did I think appear to somebody like this, or that they were looking for and knew had disappeared in the house. So, but he gives Cyprian a warning and then kind of disappears. And then something else kind of weird happens.
All kinds of
Millie,
weird things are happening in
yeah,
this part
lots
of
of
the
weird things.
episode.
So in addition to Stuart, in Cyprian's interaction, Rowan sees Millie, who honestly I did not see this coming. I didn't realize that this was
Oh,
the
the
case.
rare H.A. Conrad not seeing something coming. I mean, I'm
Well,
glad because I was also like, oh, okay, that it just makes sense that she's a ghost, right?
yeah,
Because
I guess, but
you've only seen her interacting with Carlotta. It's the whole Sixth Sense, like
right.
thing. You're
Yeah,
like, oh,
so
of course,
and honestly, look, even in the book, she was kind of this minor sort of character that didn't really do all that much. So
hmm
I didn't really pay that, I'll admit, I didn't pay that much attention to her. So, it turns out she's a ghost and she's very distraught and upset about what happened to Carlotta.
I like
Um,
this too because it kind of lends itself to the fact that the Mayfairs are all kind of magical and different.
mhm,
We learn a little bit more about that too because Tessa talks about what her power is, and JoJo talks about what her power is in the next episode. But and apparently Carlotta or Millie's power, one of them or the other, is that one of them could be a ghost and the other one can hang out with them. I don't
right.
like maybe it doesn't go beyond that.
Yeah.
The gradual unraveling of the glamour also I thought, well, it's not even that gradual because yeah, well, Cyprian's getting worse. And
Mhm.
suddenly Rowan like wakes up and goes into doctor mode and is like, oh no, this isn't right. We've been here for days. I don't even know how we got in this bed. Cyprian's like, where the hell am I? And
Yeah.
I appreciated the fact that they wrote in that Rowan would have like a logical sort of response and a
Yep.
series of logical responses. Like, get dressed. We're going to the hospital. We can't get
Yep.
out. Oh crap! I will try to operate on you.
Right.
Um, and
Um,
it like kind of all goes along in a pattern. And we get to see that Lasher like tries to make her go back to bed and forget about everything again, but forgets to wear gloves, so he's not perfect. That's great. But he's there, like Lasher's clearly not a good guy.
no.
And what I kind of appreciate about this episode is when he starts to interact with Rowan more, the way he like zips in and out of conversations, he's also super childish. Like if he doesn't like an answer, he just gives her like a look and then disappears.
Yep.
Yeah, I
And he
thought that was pretty
definitely
good.
he acts as if he's and not just him, but some of the Mayfair witches act as if he's like this not necessarily benevolent power, but a power that is useful and good and to some extent good. They kind of be like, oh, nobody understands it. But I think it's pretty clear he's not like a benevolent power. I think it's pretty clear he's childish and malicious and does things to meet his own needs or desires or whatever it might be. Um, and maybe if the witch that's in charge of him kind of goes along with it, maybe that'll be okay. But he definitely is not a good force, especially given the things he's doing to Cyprian. And ultimately, because Rowan says, "Oh, like I'll like release Cyprian and I'll like stay in the house and whatever," and he just kind of throws him through some walls to his apartment or whatever. um but the fact that he was totally hoping, I think, or his desire was that Cyprian would die and he would get full access to Rowan. And I don't know how you view that as anything other than negative, so it's an interesting thing. But she is held, I mean, the episode is called The Thrall for a reason, because she is in the power, and it is like kind of an insidious invasion, right?
It's
um
it's totally insidious, and I like, and I'm saying this like I don't like this, but I mean honestly, I think that it's good writing. He keeps saying like everything here that's happening is happening because you want it to happen this
yeah.
way. And I'm like, I don't believe that Rowan wants Cyprian to be slowly dying of a stab wound. And I don't really believe that she doesn't want to leave that house. So,
Right. And
like,
I think it's that manipulation,
yeah,
which I think is true, and maybe this is the manipulation that's been happening all along, is to basically pretend as if the person that's like linked to him has power, but clearly they don't, or they don't have that much power. I mean, they have power in the sense that he can't exist without them, I would suppose. But it's not, he is definitely, in this case, he's the one driving the car, so to speak. And Carlotta in this is sort of like her whole thing and why she tried to like burn down the room. I don't know that like I think that her ways are definitely extreme and she is also like an incredibly flawed and horrible human. But I could also see you and you can see like just in how he is acting, how Lasher is acting throughout this, why she would go to those extremes. Like you get those motivations, like why she thinks he is such a danger.
Yeah.
And like she's being held at this point, like like sort of what like up in the air or something, and Lasher keeps saying no, you're doing that and whatever. And maybe it is true that Rowan has some power she's unaware of, and that she's sort of you know subconsciously sort of keeping Carlotta at bay in this case. um but it does feel like there's a lot of manipulation going on, and that he is definitely not revealing the full picture for her.
Yeah, it's another situation where she's like, I'm not a killer. I'm not gonna kill anybody.
Right.
Cut to her killing somebody,
Right.
just because that person says something nasty to her. Really,
Yep.
it's. I mean,
Well,
we've been
it's
down
not
this
just
road.
something nasty, but I think that it's an acknowledgement of all the tragic, the sort of tragedy of her mother's life, of her life, all the things that Carlotta has basically done.
Yeah.
And basically Carlotta is telling her, oh, well, you need to kill yourself now. I don't know that anybody would really react to that well. So not that this
It
would
was
be
the "I should have killed you when you were a baby," I think
right,
is the line that throws her over the
put her
edge.
over the edge, but like still, it's not exactly like this woman's been left in a house for days. There's a body in the basement. Her aunt's a ghost, or the other aunt's a ghost. Cyprian's been thrown through the wall. I mean, I can't say that she's like in a very even state of mind at this point.
Why do you
You know,
feel like she wanted Cyprian to go to his house instead of to a hospital? I felt like that was a weird thing, even though it's the right thing because apparently only Talamasca can save him and not modern science. Uh, why
well,
wouldn't she
I
send
mean,
him to a hospital?
I don't know. Maybe she didn't know where a hospital was. Maybe it's limited to what she knows, and maybe that just seemed like a safe place to her.
Hmm.
I don't think she's in her right mind at the moment. So, you know. Uh, I don't know. That's an interesting thing given that she's a doctor. I also thought that and thought maybe it was her familiarity with New Orleans, but I don't know. Um, but you
This
know,
is this the episode also, and I just rewatched it, but I'm not. I'm blending these two together, where the Talamasca do come
yes.
and
Yes. So
perform the ritual on him.
that's the other thing. Like they do that, and like, the first person that finds him in his apartment is his sister, Odette. And you know, um it, there's this weird thing because like he kind of reveals sort of the Talamasca, which she takes in really good grace, but then he's like hide, and she doesn't really hide very well in the apartment. He makes
Hmm.
some kind of like comment that things will be really bad for her and for him if she's found, but it's not like she's like super hidden. She's just kind of peeking out from the other room. And
Yeah,
you
but Talamasca doesn't show up with like agents. It's like his
I know, but
boss and a
still,
doctor. But yeah, I
but
thought that was a cool ritual scene.
yes, that was
Um,
pretty cool. And I really liked
the doctor lady.
yeah, I thought she was pretty cool. And that whole scene was pretty cool. Where they're like saving him because it's a psychic wound or something, because Lasher, it's like a magical wound because Lasher caused it. And just the way it's pretty brutal, the way that the healer has
Hmm.
to take basically the negative magic and help get it out of Cyprian, which takes like the form of the knife that we had seen earlier. So I thought that was actually a pretty cool visual and a cool little ritual.
Yeah,
Uh, and
I
shows
like
you,
that she started speaking like Hindi or something halfway through, also, which was really neat.
yeah.
Neat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Odette's just kind of in a closet watching this all, and there's going to be a lot to talk about later, but not right away.
Yep. And then
That's kind of
I
all of the activities that happen. Other than she goes to the basement, he's like, "You can't kill me with lettuce," which I thought was a good line.
yep.
She and then after she kills Carlotta, she's able to walk out of the house, no problem. And then the camera goes upside down, which is a little on the nose, but yeah, she's free, but now she's upside down.
Right.
Now the world is all topsy turvy.
Yep. And I mean, I think a lot went into what happened before she killed Carlotta, but basically, not only had Carlotta been the reason why her mother had lived such a tragic life that she didn't know any of these people existed, but also that Carlotta had killed Antha, who was her grandmother.
Yeah.
Um, so it's, there's a lot going on before she pushes her. Again, not justified, not really. It's still a murder, and it's a murder that she's done with her own hands rather than accidentally with her power. So I
Wait,
was, what?
Rowan?
Well, I mean,
It is with her powers, though. She gives her
it
the
is with
old
her
brain bleed.
I mean, deliberately without doing it accidentally. Like
Oh,
this was intentional, not in the way. I mean, she did this with the other doctor and whatever, but didn't fully grasp her powers. Now she does, and she knows that she can kill Carlotta, and that's what she did.
yeah.
Um, so, you know, I think that is going to be a shift and probably something that will change how she's capable of it, and now she knows she's capable of it, but also fully conscious of it. So I
Yeah.
guess he was with the doctor too, but this is a relative. This was done in a moment like where I don't know. All along she had been saying that not that she felt she was better than that, but almost like she was like, "Oh, I'm not going to take out my vengeance on this person. She's like a sick old woman and that she's just like crazy, but her passions got the most of her, I guess." So,
Again.
yep.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to stop hearing from Rowan that she doesn't want to kill. She's not a killer. It's,
She is
three
definitely.
times is a trend.
Yep. Yep.
So, but yeah, that kind of takes us to the end of the thrall, and then we go into transference,
Mm-hmm.
which starts with another Scottish cold open,
Yep.
where the king's witchfinder, Kel Surprise, arrives at Suzanne's house to arrest her.
Mm.
And she says, I've done nothing wrong, but you know what? She's going to get dragged away anyway. Um, and in the modern times, for once, we don't go straight to the Mayfairs. We go to Keith, who is the morgue worker and anti witchcraft bro who we met earlier, and he is watching some sort of Fox News and drinking and eating in bed and looking at a heart in a jar in his refrigerator, of course, and taking a
Yeah,
picture of
and
it.
they're really like driving the incel kind of narrative here. I don't know. What do you think about this storyline? It feels a little forced to me, but you know,
I, unfortunately, against the backdrop of what's happening to big chunks of oppressed people in this country right now, it feels all too realistic. It
oh, I
feels, if
definitely,
anything, too provincial and does not
yeah.
have the backing of like a major political party. you
Well,
know,
actually, I was kind of thinking that that's what was a little bit what was missing. I thought that that's where they were going with this.
Yeah, and certainly this Arlo Whittle guy who, God, who was he played by? I love this guy. He always plays
This
baddies,
kind of guy. Yes, he does a
but
really good job at it.
he's going to be fun to watch, I think, unless they kill him off in the next episode.
Mm.
Oh, and this is a recurring character. Oh no, maybe not. So it's played by Chris Coy. I first came to meet this character in Banshee, and then he was in uh Peripheral and other shows that have been around. He does tend to play a morally I don't know, unenviable dude, even
He
though I don't
plays
think he doesn't have like a ill aspect.
no, it's just kind of what he does.
Yeah.
But you know, he's he's pretty. I don't know that there's this like I don't the way they have him in the suit, the way his hair is like he's got a pretty good sort of like I don't want to say cult leader, but it is a little that, right?
He's
That kind of like
yeah, he feels like a regional elected official or something, or he could be a senator.
or a little televangelisty kind of vibe,
Yeah.
maybe. But he's got that going on and he plays it really well. Um, so, you know, I think you know, I think that he's a really good baddie as
Yeah.
far as that's concerned.
No,
Um,
he's gonna keep growing into this role for
um,
sure. I wonder. He kind of looks familiar in a way that makes me think he might have been in Walking Dead.
he
Was he a
was,
Terminus guy? Was he the one who was talking a
er,
bunch of trash to to
I think
Tyrese?
so. I think he was Martin.
That's
Martin.
the name. Is that
Um, but
interesting?
yeah, so he plays like the bad guy pretty well. And then the morgue guy is really creepy morgue guy. Like he does a really good job at playing this like person that wants to be like he wants to be part of this thing. He wants affirmation and he
Hmm.
gets it in spades and he just honestly like the this guy does a really great job. And what is that actor's name? He was really I thought he was great.
Oh, you're
Um
right. Yeah, he did do well. I don't know his
I
name.
feel like I've seen him before too.
Keith Murphys is the name of the character played by Ian Hawke, who's from
Hmm.
New Orleans,
Ian Hawke.
or Hotch, yeah, Hoch,
Hmm.
and he has been in a lot of things that I have not seen.
He's got a really good face just in terms of that kind of um he's got like a good character actor. And I like that they have like sort of a local New Orleans person in there.
Hmm.
I think that's kind of fun. But he plays this really well. Like he is pathetic and creepy and just really wanting approval from this group. And honestly, like when he's sort of in there and sort of approaches the what is the name of the guy? Sorry.
Arlo.
Arlo, who's this sort of like leader of this group that's
I liked
talking,
how that interaction worked out because at first he's
right?
like, "Hey, nice speech," and and Arlo's like, thanks, brother.
Yeah.
I don't know you. You give me creepy vibes." Like
Yeah, like
even
he
Arlo
almost
was creeped out by Keith at
yeah,
first.
and he was almost like sidling away a little bit.
Yeah.
So and then it turns out he has, weirdly has the heart of Deirdre Mayfair and suddenly he's like the hero.
Yeah,
And
at least the woman, the one woman in that scene was like clutching her pearls, like, "Oh my
a little
God,
bit
you've got a heart in a
like
jar." But
he's
everybody
got a
else is
heart.
like, everybody else is so excited about it.
Yeah, it could have gone another way, but it didn't. And so there you go. It was a little bit it was kind of interesting the dynamics of that. And then there was like a Talamasca spy in there, right?
Well, that's Cyprian's boss.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he's just kind of wandering through, although he was participating because he had to play the game, right? So that was kind of interesting in general. Um, and also going on, we also have Tessa Mayfair interacting with Rowan simultaneously and kind of tying into this. Tessa is telling Rowan about what's happening, um, that this group is out there and dangerous. And
Well,
so there is
like, can we
awareness.
first talk about the scene between Rowan and Cyprian when
Oh
she
yeah,
wakes up
kind
and
of weird.
Lasher's in the apartment and she's like, "Get out of here." So he disappears. Then he turns on the ceiling fan and she
Yep.
starts to attack some leftovers.
Yeah.
Like that was something was going on with her. She's just like, "I gotta eat this, whatever meal this
But
is in
she
this
wasn't, I
box."
mean, this was also, again, more of his glamour because she wasn't actually doing that. And he has her playing with flame and she wasn't actually doing that because she wakes up and she's just standing in the kitchen. And so he's messing with her still.
I don't know. I
Uh,
felt like she really did have flame in her hand because when Cyprian wakes up, he's like, "What are you doing?"
yeah,
Unless she was just standing there with her hand up and no fire in it. But
maybe. But I mean,
yeah, he's definitely got his hooks in her. The scene here where Cyprian's like, "How is he getting in here? We've got all these protections on this place," and then he realizes quickly that it's the necklace and tries to take it to the Talamasca, and she flips out and
mhm.
screaming at him, completely lost her composure, and then kind of 180s and is like, "I'm sorry, I lied. He is here. He's in my head. I can't get rid of him." Like she's having her more rational, but also very emotional reaction of like, "I'm terrified. I have no control." Um, and so, but she does give him the necklace at that point. He's like, "All right, I'm gonna go. You be safe."
He once again,
Which, I would say the stuff that she does in this episode is in the pursuit of her being safe, right? She's trying
True.
to she makes this decision to get rid of him and goes to get help. But it's the next scene that she's in where Tessa shows up and she's so composed and she's like, listen, Tessa, let me give you a little bit of advice. I don't know. It was like such a weird juxtaposition with how she was acting
Yeah.
just a scene before. How did you feel about those two scenes?
I mean, I feel like she is sort of struggling with the control, whether it's her or whether it's Lasher. So I think that it's definitely a struggle that is happening within her head. And then she's seeking help from the people that actually know what is happening. So including, Tessa, and Tessa's like all upset about the Deirdre Mayfair heart, and then that this group of people is out there. And this is, she's getting more and more confirmation from different people, including Tessa and then Cortland, that Lasher is a power that, and JoJo actually later on, that Lasher is a power that could be helpful to her, or that she could use, or that they all view this as that she's lucky that she's the one who has this.
She's like their Spider-Man. I feel like they want her to like fix problems.
Yeah.
Maybe not Spider-Man's the wrong one, but she's basically a minor league superhero to them, and
Right.
they're hoping that she'll help them with. In the case of the hospital thing, maybe they don't need Lasher's powers for that. They just want her to stick around and give her a reason to hang out. But Tessa's clearly going to her to intervene and like do some superhero stuff to the extent that Rowan is like, I'm not a vigilante. I don't. You should call the police or have the rest of the family do something about it.
Right. And so I don't know, she's kind of just looking for her own solutions here, and which is why she visits Cortland, and then figures out through her weird little powers that he has ALS. So he is doesn't it's unclear what he fully wants from her, but he definitely is still looking to influence her, makes her promise to go and do this weird tour of the hospital with JoJo. They're trying to get her to stay in New Orleans because JoJo's like, oh, we need a new, head of neurosurgery or something like that, like by a happenstance, right?
Yeah.
All throughout all of this, Lasher keeps popping up and kind of haunting her. So she's not exactly in the best, most zen state of mind.
At least she can just talk to JoJo about it. She's like, "Oh, the spirit keeps showing up and it's not leaving me alone." And JoJo doesn't say, "Oh, you're crazy." She's like, "Oh
Right.
man, half the family would kill to have him following them around." She's like, "I don't mean that literally, but maybe." Uh,
Yeah.
so then she has a vision. So Tessa's like, "I can glamour people," and JoJo has premonitions, or I don't know. She gets messages. It feels like.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and she's like,
unclear exactly.
we have to go to the First Street house, and so they go back in there. Which, if I was Rowan, I would not be in a huge hurry to go back in that house.
Yeah.
But apparently, they have to
Um,
because Dolly Jean has come, and she has Julian's diary, and they've had a scene with Dolly Jean and Cortland talking about why would we do this? What's in it? How does this help the family? To let Rowan get out of her designee responsibilities. And there's still stuff here that we don't know, like how Cortland, we think, knows more about this prophecy that is mentioned at the end of this episode. He knows things that he's not letting on. Probably so does Dolly Jean. The 13th witch is significant. I think we both understand that from having read the books, although I have forgotten all of the significance of it.
yeah.
There's a lot at play here, but they are willing to help Rowan get rid of Lasher as long as it goes to someone else in the family, and so that's what they kind
Right.
of
And I
offer
mean,
up.
look, I also think that part of it is that they want to have that power within the family, and maybe somebody who's a little bit more pliable and willing to play with them,
Yeah,
or help them, which Rowan doesn't seem to be.
like
As a
Cortland
quick
says, raised outside the nest. Maybe it's too much to ask of her, which I feel like is a really reasonable,
fair.
empathetic sort of thing to say.
Also just a quick total non sequitur, but also wanted to point out that the woman that is so horrified with the Deirdre Hart
Is she
reveal,
Diana or
she
Diane?
is
Oh
from
my
Diane
gosh.
from Walking Dead, and I was like, that looks like a Walking Dead person. So it's just kind of funny that both her and Diane and Martin appear in a scene together. So I just thought that's interesting. Anyway, back to Cortland, but yeah, I think that there's an idea that you know, Rowan's been, this is a pretty big crash course into what's the whole family is, something that they have all been steeped in for all their lives. So it is probably unreasonable to expect her to be like, especially somebody who's a scientist, even though she is certainly now aware that there are things out there that she can't explain. You know, it's still a lot to take in. It's a lot to process. And so I think that they view this as a, some of them I think view her as being kind of ungrateful. That is the sense. But also maybe if it works to their advantage, they're willing to help her. I think that they would rather do that than, you know, be estranged from her and the power that I guess Lasher provides their family.
Yeah. Uh, you know, by the time this thing ends, she's basically out of the family, it feels like.
Yeah. And
Um,
they seem all right with that. So
yeah, because the only reason they were all into her was because she was the designee. They
right.
don't know her. She's a
No.
stranger.
Right.
Yeah. Then the way Dolly Jean kind of twists the knife after the ceremony is complete, and you know she spits up the necklace, which kind of screws over Cyprian because he's back at the Talamasca trying to use the necklace to see what's going on in Scotland, and we do keep going back to those cutscenes. Uh,
Right.
and Dolly Jean comes up to her after she spit out the necklace, and it's gone to Tessa now, and is like, "Do you feel good? Can you still see?" And she's like, "Yep, my doctoring skills have always been mine. I am the master of my domain." And Dolly Jean's like, "So why do you look so sad?" Which is such a dick thing to say. Like, sure, maybe she is sad, but you don't have to tell her that. God.
Right. But I also think that there's some debate. Did Lasher actually pick Tessa?
I mean, we didn't see anything to suggest that. Lasher has not appeared
Usually,
since the ceremony, right? He has not
right. Like,
appeared
and
again.
he only appeared to say something kind of like, "Hey, why are you doing this, Rowan?" And
You really want to get rid of me, huh?
right. And so it makes me wonder what the last ceremony was, because basically Cortland mentioned that Catherine had transferred her powers to Julian. So, I mean, it's happened before, so maybe it's a thing, but it doesn't seem like, it seems like every time he's been sort of present or done something, we would have seen him. And so I think that's pretty significant. And also he doesn't appear to Tessa at all, as far as we know.
As far as we know.
Um,
And these scenes
so
are so interspersed with what's going on in Scotland and the original summoning of
right.
Lasher. It's kind of interesting to see Suzanne summoning him at a moment of like pure desperation when her sister's getting dragged away by the skeezy husband,
Yep.
and she is in the cage and being carted to the river. And she's like, "Screw it! I'm just going to start saying the evil words." Her sister tells her to,
Mm-hmm.
and but like something starts happening almost immediately. Like wind starts blowing, fires start catching. Like it's a real instant gratification sort of scenario for
Right.
Suzanne, whereas for Tessa,
I will
not
also
so.
point out that, Suzanne says she's not a witch. Well, this is pretty much evidence that she is.
Which
Um,
at that point, like, why would saying
yeah,
I'm not a witch has gotten her nowhere, right?
right.
In fact, it's only
Um,
made things worse.
yeah, and so but the interesting thing about this is that Cyprian has been witnessing all of this, except when Lasher finally appears, he basically knocks Cyprian out within this vision and he's trapped. So,
Yeah,
and then maybe that's when the necklace gets sort of transported to Rowan, but um it is interesting because this is, especially with his manifestation in this case and Suzanne's powerlessness before this, you can absolutely understand why she would be on board with this, because she was about to be drowned. Her sister, who knows what her fate is at this point, but that is really what tipped it all off. And honestly, you could see why Suzanne would be totally fine with this whole town burning down, right?
yeah. I'm kind of curious, like, what is the future for her? A lot of
Mhm.
witnesses. I don't know. She's not. She's going to be kind of famous after this. You would think. Maybe she gets on a boat to America right away. I don't know.
Yeah, something's gonna happen to so she can get away, but so we'll see, I guess, maybe in the next episode. But
But so in New Orleans, Tessa gets the necklace put around her neck. People are cheering. They're like, "Oh, he chose you." No evidence to confirm that. But as you can imagine, this hasn't happened since Julian. That dude's been dead for a long time.
mhm.
Also, what did you think of the doll? that they use for this
Oh,
ritual.
I was about to say, so this is the other thing. You're asking Rowan to deal with a lot of weird stuff. This is a pretty creepy, awful thing. And it's like part of the summoning thing is that she uses this incredibly weird little, I guess, voodoo doll. I don't know, some kind of represent. It has like a piece, physical piece of each one of her ancestors. How that continued on is kind of creepy, but it's like Dolly is giving her sort of the rundown of the pieces of this, which is incredibly disturbing. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that thigh bone that makes the head or hip bone is Deborah's, and this, and then she has to add in her mother's hair, and it's like, you're asking Rowan to really stomach a lot of weirdness here. And then not only that, when they're in the little circle, each of them has to kiss the doll in a strange way. I did notice that the actor who plays Tessa air kissed the doll. She was not into it. So, um, but this is a lot of weirdness that Rowan is expected to sort of like be okay with. um so yeah, that doll thing was creepy.
So
But
Tessa now considers herself the designee, and the rest of her family does too, and they're all trying to party. And she goes up to Deirdre's room and is like, Lasher, whenever you're ready, I'm ready. He doesn't appear, and she like starts to DM Keith, the morgue guy, to be like, hey, that sounds so cool that you've got a heart. Let's meet up, because she wants to immediately go into vigilante mode with
well,
zero
maybe, but
evidence
it's
that she's
still,
got power.
she doesn't know that she actually has him. And then this is like, I mean, they're doing it obviously deliberately, showing these
Yeah.
parallels. So Suzanne is somebody who is actually linked to Latcher. He definitely steps up and takes care of her, rescues her. He is absolutely, in like showing of power here in a case where her life is in danger. And by contrast, Tessa goes, and I have to say, showing up to meet this guy alone is probably a bad move. And seems weird to me that she wouldn't have involved the other Mayfair witches to help and at least have her back, going all alone. But maybe she thinks she really does have the power of Lasher. But at least as far as we see in this episode, she does not, because he does not appear to rescue her. She gets kind of surrounded by these weird witch hunters or new witch hunters. And it does not look good for her. And Cyprian's caught in the sort of, the past, or then in this memory. And Rowan, we don't yet know what the repercussions of all this are. So um I'm I did not go ahead, so I am looking forward to watching the last couple episodes of this. But I don't know, what were your thoughts? Anything towards the end of this episode that seemed.
I liked seeing Tessa use her glamour. I was a little bit
Yeah.
disappointed that it wore off so fast.
I also didn't necessarily love how it manifested. It's just like kind of blurry and
She's
echoey.
just complimenting him, and he gets into a real tight focus. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
So
yeah, but then like as soon as the flashlights show up, I guess it's because she breaks concentration, and so he's just like, "It's her, it's Tessa Mayfair," and Arlo is like, "Look who joined the part." It's so. What's weird also is that he's always in a suit, and everybody he hangs out with are these like backwood bubbas. Like there's just a real step there. But yeah, okay. So that's the movement. It's him in a suit and everybody else, and a couple of church folk. But this definitely feels like it's going to be bad for Tessa.
yep.
It's a good episode. I enjoyed this one.
I did too, and I'm curious to see, because there's actually I think there's not that many episodes left.
I
So
think you're right. There's 7, 8, and that's it.
yeah,
2
so
more.
just 2 more. So we're gonna wrap this up next time.
And then we can move on to Silo, which I have completely been watching
Have
because
you been terrible?
absolutely, it's
Bad,
such a good
Stuart,
show. I'm
bad.
enjoying it, and so yeah, that is a good show too.
I have not given in. I've been
Well,
very good, but anyway.
good for you.
Um,
I will try not to combine the episodes in my head, but they're coming out once a week, so there's a ways to go still.
oh well, then I will hold off. I'm gonna hold off. But anyway, if you enjoyed these episodes, let us know, and we'd love to hear from you. reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. I'm gonna let you say the other things, Stuart, because I'm bad at it.
We're on Twitter at Reanimated PCast, and you can find all of our episodes on Podbean at reanimated.podbean.com.
So looking forward to wrapping this up next time, and until then, ciao.
Okay. Bye for now. Don't know why I did that in the Southern. Thank you for listening and goodbye.
Maybe that was your New Orleans accent.
I don't know what they sound like down there.